Next on, just in a matter of a minute, we have Gabrielle Blackwell, and we are going to talk about uh, what are we talking about? How to drive a high-performing SDR team.
Yeah,
Okay, well,
hi everyone again.
I'll let you take over.
Yeah, thank you. I'm super excited to add Gabrielle Blackwell to the stream. Hi, I'm Gabrielle.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm doing well. And you actually met a week ago.
Yeah, I'm doing well. All right, cool. So should I just kick things off now?
So I'm super big fan of you. Yeah, I'm happy to follow you on LinkedIn. So for those who might not know, Gabrielle is a co-founder and co-host of the Women in Sales, which is super cool community. And she's a super amazing SDR manager and SDR leader. So I guess you can. I'm putting mine back to you so you can share your super cool thing.
Okay, cool. Here, all right, we'll get into it. So hey everyone, my name is Gabrielle, or GB is another way of addressing me. Okay, here we go. Yes, you can see in the background. So my session today is really about running or building a high performance team and establishing a really effective way to be able to manage that team. So in terms of just what to expect for today, I'll share a turnaround story. This is the experience that I had this year as an SDR manager at Gong. I'll share with you some lessons learned from that story as a total turnaround. And then I'll also open up the floor to a Q&A for the last 5 minutes of this 30-minute session. So as William had mentioned, I've been in SDR, I've done the AE role, I've been in sales enablement as well. And so I've been very much focused on managing and leading SDR teams for the past 4 years. So so we're gonna just get into the content right away. If you have questions along the way, William will be sure to collect those and we'll address them at the end. So I want to walk you through. So the most recent company that I was at was Gong.io. Might know about us, or it's not us anymore. I'm actually getting ready to transition to a new company. But when I had joined Gong last year, I came into a segment that had been historically an underperforming segment. My first month on the job, the team that I had hit 67%, but month over month, we were able to increase that to get to 114% in December. And we're actually one of the top performing teams across all of the 70 or 80 people at Gong in the SDR program. January hits, we saw some changes happening that kind of negatively impacted the SDRs. And then over time, month over month, we started to see performance dip all the way down to 50% in March, right? So that is not great. But there were certain things that I had to learn, certain things that I had to do in order to really be able to turn around this team, not once, but a second time. And so in implementing these lessons, right, these lessons learned, or lessons as implementing my learnings as I was getting these lessons, was able to turn around that team and get the team to performing 100% month over month after that. So this journey that I went through really provided me with a lot of learnings, a lot of lessons, a lot of insights that I'd love to pass along to y'all, hoping that you won't have to go through going or dropping from 114 to 50% performance within a matter of a few months. So some of the lessons that I learned really high level are, the first one is knowing yourself as a leader and really owning your dreams, your aspirations, and your vision for the team that you're managing. The second part is sharing that dream and rallying the team around that. A third piece is really being intentional about building trust with your team. It's about establishing routines and rituals that reinforce the things that you're valuing, the things that you are dreaming about. Another piece of this is really being curious about your people, how they work, and then recognizing that the integrity of the team informs the morale of your team. So this is not tactics in the sense of all right, what kind of productivity tools can you use? But it really is about what is the leadership philosophy? What is the leadership disposition that you can start to emulate in order to drive the performance of your team, and recognize that how you show up as a person, how you show up as a leader is really going to have a huge impact on every single person on your team and potentially beyond that. So for this first part of knowing yourself and owning your dreams, this was something that I had to do for myself first and foremost as a leader. I had to get right. I had to know myself first and foremost before I could ever show up and help others. So some of those things for me really meant like I need to understand what are my strengths and how to use them. I needed to set goals for myself and for my team as well. And I had to map out that plan of attack. So for example, one of the things that I really wanted to do was I wanted to increase engagement because I had data points that let me know not only do I have a team that's underperforming, I also have a very disengaged team. So also part of my plan was, all right, where am I in my engagement level? How can I increase my engagement? And with that, can I lift the tides of engagement on my team? And then also leadership wise, what are the things that I do very, very well? I might not be the absolute best at reading the numbers and the data, but I am really good at caring about people, being very curious about them as well. And so how can I leverage those superpowers that I already have in order to really make sure that this goal that I have for my team, which is I want people to be highly engaged, I want them to be I want them to be high performers. How can I leverage the strengths that I have in order to make that a reality? So the next piece of this is then I need to share that out with the team. I think one of the big things that I see happening in sales, what I've seen happen is there can be such a focus on being perfect, always being strong, always having everything together. Even as I was listening to the Chili Piper session with Elric, Joey, and Alize, I heard the questions of like, how can I stay motivated? Sometimes it's tough. So not every day we're going to be super engaged. Not every day we're going to be incredibly motivated. But if I can share a goal and aspiration out with my team, which is, hey, I really want to have a highly engaged, high performing team. And I want everyone to feel incredibly cared for. And here are some ideas that I have about that. And I can also invite them in. That's how I can get people more bought into the same vision, the same aspiration that I have for the team. Like I have other people who are now bought into that. And it's not just me as a manager who wants to see this happen. I also have brought in my team who's saying, hey, I as an individual, I'm going to be bought into this team goal. And all together, we're much more powerful in that way. So I think as a manager, it behooves us all to really be honest, open, and vulnerable with our team. And with that, we have to trust that our team is going to be open and honest with us. So a next thing here that I wanted to share is talking again about like really bringing people in is in order to bring people in and for people to stay there, people need to trust. Like they need to have some level of trust with me as a manager. They need to have a level of trust with their peers. They need to have a level of trust with the organization. And so one of the things that I had done right before I had left Gong is I did like a workshop or I did a Tuesday topic with my team where we talked about trust. And there's this Harvard Business Review article that talks about there's 3 core drivers of trust. There's authenticity, which is people are experiencing the real GB. There's empathy, is they believe that I care about them and their success. And there's a logical piece of, when I say, hey, here's the plan, here's how I think we're going to be successful. They understand my reasoning and my judgment as sound. They're like, okay, I get that. It's not totally crazy. GB, you're not speaking out of your side here. It makes a lot of sense. So the trust isn't always, because like sometimes things happen, right? Someone leaves the company, somebody has to get let go because of a performance improvement plan. And all of a sudden people might be wondering what's going on. But I, as a leader, can show up and recognize, all right, number one, authenticity. Do people am I showing myself as the truest version of myself? And am I being very, very open with my team on that? For example, I'm a hippy dippy witch lady, like reading tarot cards and oracle cards. And that's what I do with my team. If I don't do that with my team, I'm probably being insincere. The empathy piece is really just like each and every day might be just checking in on folks. It might be asking people about what are their motivations, what are their aspirations. And then again, like the logic, it's one thing just to go in and say, hey, do 100 calls. Someone just tells me what to do like that, I'm probably going to tell them to kick rocks. But if someone shares with me, hey, you shared with me, GB, that you want to hit 150% of your quota. You also know that based off of your conversion rates, you need to do 100 calls in order to get there. What do you think? Is 100 calls going to be the path to get there? Or is there another option? I'm actually taking people through the logic and incorporating that authenticity, that empathy, and that logic piece and getting them to trust the plan and trust that I have their best interest in mind. Another big thing that I'm focusing on is establishing rituals. Real quick in the comments, has anyone here heard of Phil Jackson? Yay or nay? But if not, Phil Jackson is amazing. He's the coach of the Bulls back when like Jordan, Scottie Pippen were all there. Like when they won like 5 championship rings. Yes, of course. Thank you. Then also was like coached the Lakers, Kobe Bryant, Shaq. And one of the big things, what I think is really interesting about Phil Jackson is he approaches leadership in a really radical and odd way, and incorporates a lot of rituals that he knows from like growing up next to, I believe it was a Native American reserve. So he incorporates a lot of ritualistic things into how he leads his team. One example of that was he would have the Bulls practice in the dark. Like it was just to like switch things up to get them more bonded, where they don't have to see each other, but they can actually be that much more connected to each other. And so this is like the beauty of rituals a little bit, which is I talked about there's providing, I see free McNuggets. He's a total hippie, and so am I, and I'm here for it. So, one part of this is providing connection. So like when I think about my team, and especially in this remote environment, if we were in the office, like we can go around, we can high five, we can fist bump, we can celebrate with each other, we can go and we can go to lunch, we can go to coffee, we can get drinks afterwards, whatever else it is. We can have all these things that enable us to be connected. But in a remote world, we don't have that. So we have to find ways to provide connection. We're also in this world of a lot of uncertainty. There's just like everything seems to be changing every single day. And so we have to find a way to manage that uncertainty and reduce the anxiety that comes along with it. And then also like as folks in sales development and in sales, resilience becomes a superpower. We're going to be getting no's all day long. We're going to get hangups. We're going to get unresponses. Sometimes we get people who are just straight out mean to us. So there has to be this way to build some kind of, I don't want to say a shield, but to be able to endure those kind of experiences. And so rituals can be used as a tool to support those 3 main things. And so like what that looks like could be morning stand-ups. And so I'm sharing with you like what I did with my team. It's morning stand-ups every morning, right? Like whether or not you like it, that's how I ran my team. Weekly workshops. So that was a time where we could just learn. It's call blitzes. So people are not by themselves as they're going after things, and even call reviews. Like how do we start to provide feedback together in our work? So these are certain things that I would do in order to make sure that, number one, people are learning, people are connecting, people are able to manage their work, and they're in a certain level of anxiety better, and they're also able to better handle the kinds of events that are going to happen in the SDR world. So a couple of key notes that I'll have here under the how is there has to be a clear theme and objective for each meeting. For me, the things that I value a lot are learning, development, and growth. And so that's the thing. That's always the theme. That's always the objective is rather than even having a disciplinary action, a consequence, I'd rather focus on, hey, how do we develop from this moment here on out? So every Tuesday topic that we have, it's about what is something that we can grow in as people, first and foremost, that will also support us as professionals as well. And so I think this is also a big piece of in driving a high performing team. It's not just going to be about KPIs in and of itself. It's going to be about, are people really bought in, not just to the program, but into me as a leader? And I think the more that I can say, I care about you as a professional, of course, in this role. More importantly, I care about you as a person, and I want to be there as a support system, as a sounding board, or whatever else it is, to make sure that you are able to, so that you feel supported in whatever you want to do as a person. And so with that, we're also going to include personal development that has nothing to do with work as part of this journey. And that's going to be something unique to our team that I think is actually going to be a key piece of driving high performance. So that's just that's the horse that I'm riding on. I'll keep on riding it until the end of time. But another piece here is encouraging participation from everyone on the team. So it's not enough just to have the people who are going to speak up continue to speak. I also have to make sure that I'm being considerate of if there are folks who are a little bit more quiet or who need a little bit more encouragement to speak up, that there's room being made for them. And then also another piece here is like, make it recurring, just make it consistent. So let's go into the next slide. All right, I got a question for y'all. What happens when you assume? Now, I say I don't know where everyone is in the world right now. Not sure if this is an idiom just to the US or not either. But what happens when you assume is, oh no, you make an ass of you and me. That's what happens when you assume. I forgot to actually put that down. But typically what happens when you assume is you make an ass of you and me. So so like one of the things that I see happen with some leaders is they assume, like they make assumptions about their people. For example, I was talking to someone who I'm close with, and the person they're reporting to right now is like, hey, listen, I want to give you experiences. I want to give you experiences so you'll be exposed to certain leadership projects. And that way you can start to cultivate your leadership skills. And this person, knowing I know them, this person has no interest whatsoever in becoming or moving into a leadership position. This person's not motivated by that. And so that then ends up being a huge disconnect in between that person and their manager, where they recognize, wow, you don't know me. And so if people don't feel like you know them, how are they ever going to follow your advice and your guidance? So one of the big things that I learned this year during this journey of like going from 50% to 100% plus consistently is I really have to understand what are people's whys. Like, why do they do what they do? Why do they say what they say? Why do they believe what they believe? So I have to get very, very curious with my team. I have to understand who they are as people. Like, how did they become themselves? It's not just enough to ask them about their work history. It's not just enough to ask them about their academic history. I want to know, I really want to know about folks. So I got introduced to an exercise recently where it's called it's like 7 minutes. So in a one-on-one, the rep and myself, each of us will take 7 minutes and we'll just talk about our life story. So one of the, I did this recently with a new rep who I had right before I left Gong. And I got to know so much about them. I got to know that they spoke Spanish fluently as a kid. I got to know that they grew up in a house of like 20 some people. And so I really got to understand them as the person that they are, rather than just, oh, hey, you're reporting to me as an SDR. So in that, we're able to build a better bond and we're able to cultivate that much more trust. And also I, as a manager, start to better understand, how do I need to show up to make sure that this person really does feel supported? And I can also ask them questions like, hey, walk me through times where you've had other leaders walk me through times where, if it's a leader, a manager, your parents, a role model, a teacher, whomever it is, tell me about someone you felt like was super supportive of you. How did they show up? So I want to get just I'm just infinitely curious about when do people feel supported? When do they not feel supported? Like those kind of things. And again, that helps me figure out how can I show up that much better for them. Again, having conversations about what are their career goals. Those should be consistent conversations over time. I would imagine that if folks are in an SDR position, not everybody knows what they want to do, and that's totally fine, right? So that can be an iterative process, and maybe one career goal is to define a career goal. So that's totally cool as well. Other things I really want to understand that I'll encourage everyone here to ask. And by the way, I'm giving a lot of perspective that is meant for someone who's in a sales development leader position. And also, if you're in an SDR position right now, or if you're wanting to be in an SDR position, these are things that you can look for in a leader and things that you can start to vet for in interviews. So that's just one note that I wanted to make there. But other things that I want to know about the rep is how do they work best? How do they like to receive feedback? If I've got one person on my team where if I'm super duper direct with them, they might crumble. I've got other people on my team where we can joke and banter, and I can, excuse my language, I can talk shit with them, and that's part of the bonding process. But if I don't have that, if that's not, they're not receptive to that, and I show up in that way, that can be incredibly detrimental and really hard to recover from. So these are things that I constantly have to think about when all right, I want the best out of this person. I want the most out of this person. And what does it take? And they're going to have to teach me. Oh, like they're going to have to teach me more than I can just make assumptions about that. So other things that I really care about are like, what are people's strengths, right? I talked about the example of me figuring out what my strengths are. And so, and being able to accomplish my goals that much more effectively, leveraging my strengths. I believe the same thing for the reps. And then lastly, just how do they work? Again, we can focus a lot on KPIs. I think that's one piece of the puzzle, but there's plenty of people where they're not going to be super high KPI people. And I have to honor that and support that if they're getting results. So if I all of a sudden, like if I have one person on my team who's able to hit 100% of their number purely on LinkedIn, but yet I'm telling them they need to make 50 calls in a day, it doesn't really make sense. Like there's a huge disconnect there. So my main role is like, how do you work? And that one part of that might include me actually doing shadow sessions with them where I literally just observe them work. And then I can show up and say, all right, hey, like here are some small adjustments that can be made, or here are some reports and dashboards, or here's what we really need. Here's where I see you needing a lot more support and maybe running into some roadblocks, and like, let's remove those. But that really requires that I have an intimate understanding of how they work, how they want to be approached as reps and as people, right? And how they would like for me to show up for them in certain situations, whether that's they're performing very well or there's some room for improvement. And then the last piece here, before we kick it off to a Q&A, this went a lot faster than I thought I was going to go, is the integrity of the team informs morale. One of the things that I've learned quite a bit, I've been in this sales and sales development SaaS game for 6 going on 7 years now. And one of the main things that has remained true is if there is a poor team spirit, right? If the morale is low, performance is going to be low. You might have 1 or 2 people who are going to be doing very well, but the rest of the team's probably not. And in that, when you have some kind of imbalance where some people are doing very well and some people are not, that usually causes a lot of resentment. So one of the big things that I forgot an E. It's supposed to not that's moral. It's supposed to be morale. My bad. But like one of the big things that I've learned to be true is that as a leader, the morale of a team starts with me. So my team, I really do believe this, is each individual on the team is a representation of me. The team overall is a representation of me. Of course, every person is an individual, but still, I'm like, how I show up is really going to have a big impact on how the team shows up. So if I'm coming in like a total curmudgeon every single day and I don't want to talk to people, or if I'm very short and snippy, that's probably going to show up in the team some way and somehow, right? But if I'm showing up more often than not, kind of calm, cool, collected, or if I'm showing up being very authentic, if I'm being very transparent, and I'm also I'm sharing from an honest place, like that's also going to show up, and it's more often than not going to be a positive way of showing up. So just recognize that as a leader, everything starts with you. Another piece of this is a large part of like your success as a leader is going to be informed by your ability to block and tackle for your team. Again, I kind of bring it back to the KPIs, kind of like KPIs example is if your team is doing very, very well, like it could be so easy for other folks in the organization to be like, all right, well, how do we do more, right? Like, how do we push more? But if you as a manager, again, like you know how your people work, you have an intimate understanding of what's going on in their world. You also recognize that in asking people to do more, that might mean that they're now sacrificing a work-life balance. So you are the advocate for your team. You're the buffer for your team. So like a large part of success is going to be on that blocking and tackling. And I think the third piece is the leadership requires us to make the difficult decisions when there's inconsistency or disregard for team values. And here's what I mean by that. In order to drive a high-performing team, you have to value high performance. You need to define high performance, and you have to also plot out like what is your theory around how to drive high performance. So if a lot of my philosophy is I believe the high performance of the team is really informed by the morale of the team, the spirit of the team, and our connectedness as a team, and also our commitment in being disciplined and consistent in what we do every single day. If I have someone on my team who's not getting results and is not abiding by the values, it's my decision to go and have those difficult conversations with them, or, like, figure out a way to, I mean, unfortunately, sometimes you have to manage people out, because I don't think that it is excusable to save one for the sake of the morale of the team, because it's going to show up in other ways. So, like, again, I can't stress this enough, that, like, morale is going to be such a huge influence into how the team is either performing or not performing. And that as a leader, it really is your job. It starts with you, but it also means you have to constantly be, like, entrenched with what's going on with your team. How are people feeling? How are people thinking? So you have to be so attuned to what's going on to make sure that you have a really solid and a very healthy level of morale on your team. So let's see. Okay, so let's do this. Those are the slides. Those are the slides, y'all. So you stuck with me for that time. William, number one, how did I do?
Oh my God.
And what questions do we have?
Oh my God, that was amazing.
Thanks.
Honestly, I just need to, like, turn back in a few days and just watch lots of things you mentioned here. Really inspiring conversation. So yeah, really inspiring presentation.
Thank you.
super love your actually your style of managing the SDRs. So yeah, we actually have a few great questions here. Just let's get through them. First of all, Nathan Ward is asking, what would be the one biggest tip for an aspiring SDR manager?
Yeah. One biggest tip. Honestly, like, if you're, I think one of the hardest transitions that I made was moving from an individual contributor position into an SDR manager position. And I think continuing to be a manager, it's challenging. So, and for many reasons, I'm gonna get to my piece of advice in a second, but, like, I think it can be so hard to be responsible for so much. And there's so many people that are involved. It's your teammates, it's your manager, it's people, cross-functional partners. And so I think, like, for me, I think I wish the advice that I'd give I wish I had this piece of advice when I was first starting, which is, like, just know yourself and be yourself, and constantly be curious about who you are as a person. Like, and that's to me, right? Because, like, if I'm out there just trying to be, Kevin Dorsey is a mentor of mine, right? So if I'm just trying to be Kevin Dorsey, I'm never going to figure out what it is that I am uniquely positioned for as a manager, as Gabrielle Blackwell. So I think it's just, like, just know yourself, be patient with yourself, and trust that you like, whatever your strengths are, like, lean on those strengths to be able to get you to where you want to be. And if you can follow that, like, whether it's your first time in management or you've been in management for a while, I think you'll be in a much better spot than if you were trying to be some other form of manager that's not true to you.
Yeah, got it. A few more questions. Let's go. How long would you make morning stand up for a team of 6? Very tactical question. Cool.
Like 15 to 30 minutes. It doesn't have to be super long. Yeah, 15 to 30 max.
Mm-hmm. Cool. How do you help your SDRs lead them to their superpower? Like,
so the question is how to help SDRs see, like, what their superpower is.
It's the superpowers that gets meetings, I guess. Yeah.
How do you help lead to their superpowers, to superpower? I think there's a lot of, like, the Clifton Strengths Assessment. There's a lot of assessments out there for finding your strengths. So, like, there's, like, you could do a Strengths Finder assessment, you can do an Enneagram assessment, you can do a personality assessment. So it's much like you can kind of more so step in as a guide of, like, hey, like, let's check out some of these things. Or you can ask them questions of, like, what do you think you're really good at? Or even one part of it is, as you're observing them working, they might be really good at things and they don't even realize it. There's, like, that unconscious competence. And so you as a manager or as a leader can say, wow, William, you are really good at finding technical hacks. Like, that's huge, right? So and it's like, how can you use that more? or like how can you help them share out their gifts with other people. I think that's also a really big thing, which is if I have someone on my team who's exceptional at Sales Navigator and I know the rest of my team doesn't know what they know, then it's like, all right, hey, would you be open to sharing these tips with other folks? And so they're like, oh, I'm getting recognized for this strength, so I'm going to keep on using that strength because I'm getting that recognition in the form of opportunities to lead. So those are a couple ideas that I have.
Helps them to lead in what they as the
Yeah.
best.
I think a lot of it has to do with, number one, like make them like help them get aware of it. And then the second part is on you. Recognize them for it when they're using their strengths. So if they're never being recognized for it, they're probably not going to do it as much.
Okay, so one more minute, I guess. A really great
Okay.
question. Flipping it on its head, how do you help solo underperformers? For example, 8 in the team are performing well and one isn't, but it's a valuable member of the team. So how do you help them?
Yeah. So real quickly, so one of the things that I did is, and if you reach out to me, I can share the content that I have, is I have a way of identifying like where are the bottlenecks in their process. If I have an entire sales development funnel mapped out from like activities to conversation, to connects, to demo set, to accounts work, all those other things, then I can see on the team, like, all right, a lot of teams perform very well. And then here's where someone is not. We address that bottleneck. And so we'll create like a coaching and development plan to be able to move, like either to remove the bottleneck or to increase the conversion rate in some way, shape, or form. But then like, I think there also was another piece of this, which is if someone's not doing well by a significant amount, you're doing all the coaching and development stuff. There's really easy ways to be able to dig in and see that that person is actually not doing their job. So I've seen it before. I'm making my 100 calls a day, right? When I actually go and I look in the data, they're all fake dials, right? So like that does happen. So if I see that like everyone on my team is doing well, one person is not, I've identified the bottleneck there. I really have to dig into the data to find the data points that say, you're actually like, what's really going on here? More often than not, it's been this person's not engaged and they don't want to do the job. But I have to go through a series of steps. But if you want to reach out to me, because I know we're over time, if you want to reach out to me off to the side, like I'm on vacation right now, so I'm not going to respond back. But I'll respond back next week, and I can walk you through it.
Amazing. So you suggest data to be your very first point of understanding why is it not performing well. Okay, then. Thanks for your time. Thanks for a great presentation and your answers. I guess have a wonderful vacation.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
Have a good one.